September 29th, Beck Kirstein reaches out to the SGA PPA rep president and VP and tells them that they are beginning the process of searching for a new head of MT and a new executive director for all of PACE Performing Arts. The reason she's reaching out to them is because they are seeking student representation for the search committees. And that student representation, in the administration's mind, consists of one student per committee. So 2 students in total, one for the head of MT and one for the executive director committee. October 2nd, the SGA PPA rep president and VP have a meeting with the PACE administration to talk about the hiring committee and what the administration is looking for. It's there that the administration communicates that they are seeking 1 student per committee and that student will have 1 vote on a committee primarily composed of faculty and administrative officials. They're also told to consult the rest of SGA and STARI and to come back to them with 2 candidates by October 16th. October 7th, the PACE administration emails all of the current students and staff and says that a woman named Jacqueline Lawton will be undergoing an investigation into the school and into all the claims that have been brought up through CR Truths and the Facebook page. Later that day, October 7th, PACE Performing Arts posts "We are hiring" on their Instagram page and says that if there are any viable candidates that they should apply through the website on Instagram. Obviously, the community was deeply upset with this and met that post with an uproar, commenting, asking them to have conversations with CR Truths, asking why they are denying this help that is readily available to them, which is all we are trying to do. And the person who runs that page, and I guess anyone who approved that page, had set it so that the only people that could comment on this post needed to be following the account in order to do so. Down to the fact that they literally said, you need to be a follower in order to comment. That says it all. The next day, October 8th, the SGA PPA rep president and VP reach out to CR Truths and inform us of this hiring committee process that they are being asked to undergo. It is agreed between all parties, aka the SGA, STARI, and CR Truths, that the administration should be in contact with CR Truths to implement hiring practices and our list of candidates. From this point on, I'm going to be reading email exchanges and also showing these emails, so bear with me. There's a lot of reading that's going to happen, but it's important. So October 15th, the SGA PPA rep president and VP reach out to Beck Kirstein in response to the initial request to find committee members and says that they are aligned with CR Truths and that they believe that CR Truths should be contacted to select the student representatives for the committee, and that the administration should reach out. This is part of the email they sent. Given that the Student Government Association has publicly voiced its support for the CR Truths movement, in addition to STARI's internal support, we are choosing to stand behind them and their demands. With this decision, we will not provide our support for any students chosen by the administration outside of direct collaboration with and approval from CR Truths leadership. It goes on to say, as voices of our students and allies to our fellow students who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, it is our duty to amplify the voices that have already come together to create a movement that is working to prevent any further pain or trauma within the PACE School of Performing Arts. We believe that real allyship comes in this magnification, and hope that yourselves and the administration are willing to acknowledge when the time has come to step aside and let the members of the community, both past and present, build a new future for themselves and those to come. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out and we will happily address them. They got no response to that email for 3 weeks. October 23rd, CR Truths meets with Jacqueline Lawton, the woman who is in charge of the investigation into the school. And we provide this entire timeline for her, just as we did with SGA, Starry, diversity ambassadors, we provided for her. She is shocked. She had no idea of most of the things that I told her. So again, we see this tactic of the administration encouraging people to do an investigation and to question the goings on within the school, but only telling them pieces of information so that they can influence how that person approaches this investigation. This woman is in charge of compiling all of this data and understanding this picture to the fullest degree. And she was being left in the dark about a lot of what was going on. So she was very upset. In that call, she agreed to incorporate our abolition requirements into her report and to work a little bit more closely with us moving forward. Later that day, on October 23rd, we see that the listings for the head of MT and the executive director committee have been posted on playbill.com/jobs. October 28th, instead of responding to that email I just read from the SGA PPA rep, president, and VP, Tiffany Hamilton reaches out to the president of the entire Student Government Association and the president of the Black Student Union. In this email, she provides the details that were initially provided for the PPA rep, president, and VP, but adds this part. We would appreciate your assistance in securing students from the academic unit, preferably. Student representation is vital. Do you think we would be able to identify someone by week's end so the committee can begin meeting next week? All this to say, it's very clear that they didn't get the response that they wanted from the SGA PPA rep, president, and VP, which was contact and work with CR Truths. So instead of building conversation around that and reaching out to CR Truths, they circumvent that secretly to reach out to the president of the Student Government Association and the president of the Black Student Union to search for students for the committee from the academic unit, meaning no one from the performing arts program, which these positions are directly for. And it's not to say that a student from the academic unit can't assess someone's capabilities and read a resume and get, read energies, stuff like that. But those people don't deal in the performing arts. They're not pursuing performing arts as their career. So would they be able to accurately assess someone's credentials for the head of an MT program and the head of a PACE performing arts program? I don't think so. It was very disheartening to hear that that was the route that they were trying to take. The SGA president and the BSU president both deferred to CR Truths ultimately and contacted Starry for further instruction on how to respond. October 28th, later that day, I reach out to JV again. And this time it's not so much about aligning with the movement, but I'm specifically asking for information. After hearing that in that faculty meeting that happened in August, he communicated and shared a timeline of attempts to contact Dr. Santiago and Tiffany Hamilton directly about these incidents. I wanted to corroborate that. So I asked him if he could send me that list of dates and maybe an explanation for those dates as well. He doesn't respond to my text, but I get an email from him that just says dates in the subject line. No text, and it is a timetable essentially that breaks down the entire timeline of his correspondence with Dr. Santiago and Tiffany Hamilton. This would mean that he reached out to Dr. Santiago and Tiffany Hamilton about the Island of Misfit Toys incident an entire month before CR Truth had that conversation with Dr. Santiago, where she said they had no idea of the Facebook incidents and they were not in communication with JV and Amy. And while that might have been true, since they hadn't actually responded to JV's email requesting for direction on how to handle the situation, so they technically weren't in communication, to say that they had not been contacted about any of those issues prior to us telling them was not true. You can see that the PPA faculty reached out to the administration asking for insight, asking for help, and each time, down to the deans deciding to cancel the empty town hall, but then the faculty pushing for it, but then Beck Kirstein canceling it an hour before and not telling anyone that it was going to be canceled. Very sporadic and very disorganized for a university administration. And I thank JV for sending me this timeline, but it was unfortunate because after he sent it to me, I texted him and thanked him and said, would you be willing to hop on a call with me to further elaborate on some of these points? Because I think it could clear up a lot of misunderstanding, at least in this realm, specifically dealing with JV. He didn't respond to me, and that is unfortunate because also the only way that we can corroborate that this timeline is accurate is by comparing it to our own timeline. But I don't know the firsthand experience of what all this entails, and when I tried to get it, I was met with silence. November 4th, after realizing that the SGA president and the BSU president were in full support of CR Truths, the administration, specifically Beck Kirstein, starts responding back to the SGA PPA rep, president, and VP. So 3 weeks have gone by. And in that 3 weeks, they attempted to circumvent their first approach. The email reads as follows. Tiffany Hamilton tells me that although she has met with you and Starry to discuss PPA student representation on the musical theater and executive director searches, your position hasn't changed since you wrote the email below to me a few weeks ago. Before we proceed with the searches, I would appreciate you confirming to me by noon tomorrow, in writing, that PPA will not provide student representation to the musical theater or executive director search committees. Already there's a lot of confusion here, so let's clear it up. So firstly, Tiffany Hamilton never met with Starry or the SGA PPA rep, president, and VP. That never happened. And notice how in the email, she redirects the responsibility of this decision back on the students, as if to say that the option of working with CR Truths to select student representation was a non-negotiable, and that was not even in the realm of possibility. So when the students say collaborate with CR Truths, the administration takes that as a complete rejection of the idea that they want students represented on the panel, which is not the same thing. The students were asking for students to be represented on the panel that were chosen by CR Truths. But they redirect it and say, well, you're basically saying that you don't want anyone on the panel then, which was incredibly manipulative to try. Then, 15 minutes after that first email that Beck Kirstein sent, another administrative official sends an email that basically says that they will allow for the number of students on the panel to increase from 1 to 3 to 5, which was a request that we had made in the initial email back to them. She makes no mention, though, of CR Truths or working with us. 20 minutes after that email, Tiffany Hamilton sends her own email, and she basically owns up to the fact that she, in fact, did not speak with Starry or the SGA PPA rep, president, and VP, but instead went another route, is essentially what she says. But the email reads as this. I wanted to clarify, I have not met with Cheyenne or Iman, but rather submitted requests through the SGA president and BSU president for student representatives for the searches. So these are 3 people that are heading the efforts at hiring, and they can't even get their own story straight. November 5th. After this point and after these email exchanges, it becomes clear to SGA, STARI, BSU, and SOT. A lot of acronyms, I know, but it becomes clear to all of us that the administration is using avoidant tactics and trying to get away with not really addressing everything that we're saying, but parts of it that don't really cause a lot of stress on their end. So after realizing that, we all collectively draft an email together that is our kind of final effort to get them to understand what we are asking for and why we think it's important. The email reads as follows. Thank you for reaching out to us again to confirm. We would like to stress that we aren't rejecting an opportunity to have PPA student voices heard, but as stated in our previous email, are deferring to another student organized leadership group. CR Truths is composed of both current students and alumni, and is an organization that has practically unanimous support among current students. So we believe their choices and representation on these search committees would be the best representatives of current perspective. The students behind CR Truths are the ones that expose the injustices leading to the search for a new head of musical theater. And we feel it would be a great injustice to not have their direct involvement in the search for a replacement and new executive director. As much as we appreciate that you have reached out to student leaders, given that all of our organizations have given the same message at various times you have reached out, an unwillingness to meet our request to involve CR Truth would seem to be a rejection of student opinion. Student leaders owe it to our constituents to be transparent, and should students from outside of the School of Performing Arts be appointed to search committees, we would be forced to explain to inquiring students that our recommendations were ignored. With student and faculty tensions at an all-time high, we are concerned with the level of blowback that this choice would create for your committee. We feel that our deferral is a simple recommendation that can easily satisfy the wishes of a vast majority of PPA students, and greatly hope that you will follow our recommendations and ensure the students believe they are being heard moving forward. Signed, SGA President of PPA, SGA VP of PPA, STARI, and the Black Student Union 2020-21 Executive Board. An hour later, after sending that email, Bet Kirstein responds with this. All. We welcome representation from current students who are members of SOT. Please send us the email addresses of the people we should contact to make this happen. November 6th, the SGA PPA president sends an email response to Bet Kirstein and says, please reach out to CR Truths for the list of candidates for the hiring. From this point on, if I say we, I'm referring to the collective of the SGA, STARI, and CR Truths. And the reason that the SGA PPA president said that the administration could reach out to CR Truth is because they already had our contact info, and it's publicly available. It's on our Instagram, everyone knows it, they know how to get it. So it felt like an easy request to get them to reach out for this list of student candidates. November 7th, the administration responds to this email saying they had not been given the SOT student contact list. Please advise. Which again is another way that they were dancing around what we were actually asking them to do. We say contact CR Truths, and they say, we don't have the list that CR Truths would provide because you haven't contacted CR Truths. So this is the way that they dance around this constantly. At this point, they've done it enough times that we just decide, in the interest of time, that we will send them the list of candidates from the SGA PPA president email instead of through them contacting CR Truth, because it was very clear that they were going to take every tactic to avoid contacting us. So we send them two lists, 5 students for the head of MT committee and 5 students for the executive director committee. November 9th, SGA, PPA rep, president, and VP get an email that basically is the administration trying to reduce the number of students that they're allowing on the committees. After we sent them the list, 5 students on each committee, they try and knock it down to 3. Obviously, we viewed that as unacceptable because it was already agreed upon that we could have 5, and we feel that honestly 5 was probably even less than what was actually needed, especially for the executive director committee where there are at least 8 majors and there are only 5 students able to be represented. We send an email in response saying essentially, no, we need the 5 students to stay the 5 students as you agreed to. We think it's very important and we don't think 3 will suffice. We get an email back from the administration that literally reads, sure, pick 5, no problem. Later that night, on November 9th, all of the student organizations and I meet to really have a conversation about what this hiring committee process is going to be. It's abundantly clear that we are coming up with this, we're coming against the same thing that we've been coming up the entire time, which is where they say they are doing one thing, but they're actually not. So we decide that we're going to have to set up some parameters to make this process actually inclusive, to make it actually impactful, and to also protect the current students that are going to be involved in it. So we meet that night all together to discuss how we're going to go about this. So it's decided on this call that we will create a list of hiring requirements that we have for the actual hiring process to ensure that the students' participation is not taken for granted, that it remains in integrity, and that the conclusion of this hiring process is the selection of a candidate who is actually well equipped to take on this role. Not just someone else that they're going to put in and have a bunch of harm get caused again and have a bigger mess than what has already been made. So we decide that we're going to make these hiring requirements, one of which is for student participation to be paid. Because mind you, they're asking for students to participate in training, in weekly calls, in interviews, all for free, which is unacceptable. Already the students having to engage in this way under this specific context at pace is worrying. Then to know that they wouldn't even be compensated is ridiculous. This list of hiring requirements was going to be a compilation of both requirements that the current students came up with through conversation with each other and myself, as well as some practices that CR Truths had already developed. Because if we go all the way back to when the abolition requirements were posted, we said that we would be willing to take on all transitional processes, which includes hiring. So we had already developed certain practices that we felt would best reflect a truthful selection of a qualified candidate. So the list was going to be all of those things combined, plus conversations with our strategists, consultants, and restorative justice facilitators. All of that was going to be put into these hiring requirements that we would share with the administrative officials. While this is all happening, aside from the hiring process, on November 10th, a current student emails the administrative officials specifically in charge of the PACE Performing Arts program and issues her concerns with the senior class and Bob's showcase class specifically. In this email, she expresses her upset with the inequity between the 2 class sections. So if you'll remember, there's a morning class with just Richard, and then there's an afternoon class with Richard and Bob. And the inequity comes from the fact that Richard, all qualifications about Richard aside, is not a casting director. When you go to musical theater school, one of the major things that you are hoping to do is senior showcase. And part of senior showcase is working with a casting director who is involved in the industry currently, so that you can hear what's happening and get ideas about how you're going to enter this industry. Without that, it is a huge disservice to the students to not have a casting director teaching them in this class. So she emails to highlight that inequity and basically provides a list of qualified casting directors for the administration to reach out to and potentially temporarily employ to balance out this inequity. Mind you, her and her peers did all of this work on their own, compiling a list of casting directors, their contact information, and sent it to the university. All the university had to do was contact those casting directors and see if they would be willing to help. Not only was there an inequity in one class having 2 teachers, one class having one class having a casting director, one class not having any, but also the class was still being taught by someone who has a whole history of harm and has not even addressed it or come to a point of reconciliation or repair around that. So it was very pressing that these concerns that the student was bringing to these administrative officials was addressed, because not addressing the whole Bob situation from the summer was leading not only to an inequity, but active harm being done to the students that voiced their concerns and voiced the harm that they had experienced from him. Imagine putting yourself on the line and saying, this is something that I've experienced. It's a very vulnerable place to be in. And then to have that person who caused that harm remain there only reinforces that harm can continue to happen and that no one actually thinks that the concerns that you're bringing up are valid, which is incredibly hurtful and only creates more dissonance within that class, the class of 2021. November 16th, Beck Hersheen responds to that email about the showcase class, and some of the most notable statements are as follows. We are surprised to hear that you feel cheated. We complied with the class's wishes, and that is why you no longer have a casting director. She says, we cannot hire a new casting director to join the faculty and teach the showcase class since we already have Bob Klein. She says, the university administration is not allowing the hiring of a new faculty when there is already someone on faculty who is qualified to teach that particular class. She ends it with, we would be happy to assign Bob Klein to both classes in the spring if you and your classmates are willing to learn from him. Please talk to your classmates and let us know. That says a lot in this email. She victim blames and basically says that the students reporting the harm that they were experiencing from this faculty member is the reason that their education is suffering. She shows that the administration did not take the list of harms that were presented in that Zoom call seriously at all and didn't view them as valid reasons to take action. She affirms that the university still believes that Bob is a qualified instructor, despite the entire senior class unanimously deciding that he isn't, despite the public's outrage after the video of that Zoom call was shared publicly, and despite his readiness to step down. And finally, she suggests that the students who have experienced harm from Bob can be reintroduced to him if they are willing to learn from him, which further proves that the university is completely invalidating these students' concerns and these students' harms and employing the same tactic of suppression that has been used throughout all of these stories and all of these episodes. November 16th, later that day, both committees get their official welcome emails, and in this, the students are instructed to fill out doodle polls to find a time to schedule a training with Tiffany Hamilton and Lisa Grimes, who is the head of talent acquisition in the HR department. This is where I also get on a call with the students to deliberate how we can introduce the idea of a meeting before the training begins to present our list of requirements. So at this point, the list of requirements are officially going into development between November 16th and November 22nd. November 22nd, both of the student committees send an email back to the staff that are on the hiring committees and ask for an initial meeting to present the list of student hiring requirements. In this, they say that they are doing this to establish how we proceed and what the student representatives feel would be just. Additionally, we say that we primarily want to have this meeting with the administrative officials that would have the liberty to actually implement them, aka like the provost and Tiffany Hamilton, Beck Hersheen, whoever. But we make a point also to say that the invite is open to all faculty and anyone else who are on these hiring panels. The next day, November 23rd, Lisa Grimes, the head of talent acquisition from the HR department, sends an email response back that doesn't really directly address the request for the meeting, but does say that the process of hiring is defined and outlined by, quote, HR, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and faculty governance. They send out another doodle poll to figure out scheduling. So to us, it seemed like, it was mixed messages, because on one hand, she doesn't really address the meeting request, and she also sends this kind of stern statement about the fact that this process is defined and outlined by the university, essentially, but also sends out a doodle poll to schedule a meeting. So we were like, maybe they actually are listening to our request, and this meeting that they're trying to schedule is for all the committee members to meet. But we don't hear anything for about a week after that point. After not hearing it for about a week, on November 30th, the Executive Director Student Committee gets an email that says that they are scheduling a meeting for the next day at 10 a.m. So less than 24 hours notice for this meeting. We were not freaking out, but we were definitely stressed, because we had planned to have a meeting all together to go over the list of requirements, go over the way we were going to present it. So this allowed no time for us to do that. While we can't be certain, it did seem like a tactic that had been consistent with the university, which is that they don't provide ample notice, like what they did with the town hall, like they did with the president provost meeting. They provide very little notice about major meetings that are happening, which would naturally destabilize the other side and make us kind of like scattered about how we were going to approach the situation. Also, it was confusing because we were asking for a meeting with both committees and all the faculty and staff on both committees. So the fact that this email was only sent to the Executive Director Committee and left out the head of MT Committee was also very confusing to us. The next day comes December 1st, the day that this meeting was scheduled, and at 9:48 a.m., Lisa Grimes sends another email out which says that she believes that we were asking for all the committees to be joined into one committee, which is not what we were asking for. So it became clear that there was some confusion, or that maybe she had misread whatever we had sent. And she also takes that opportunity to reiterate that the hiring process is predetermined by university policy. Later that day, December 1st, at 12:47 p.m., the meeting's already happened, and the students obviously didn't go because it was way too last minute and it was not an appropriate amount of time for them to feel prepared to go into this meeting. So we send an email response that basically says, we did not attend this meeting for this reason. There was not enough time given. For the future, when scheduling meetings with 10 plus students, please allow for 48 hours notice so that we can be prepared and actually implement it into our schedules. And ending it with a reiteration that we were not asking for the committees to be joint and be one. We were asking for a joint meeting, but not a joint committee. A couple hours later, December 1st, 2:23 p.m., Lisa Dash Grimes sends a response where she finally says that she will schedule a meeting with all the students herself and possibly Tiffany Hamilton. And she ends that by saying that she will take our request for 48 hours notice into consideration. The next day, December 2nd, the faculty head for the executive director committee sends out an email that says that they will be sending out a doodle poll to schedule a joint meeting so that the students can present all of their concerns. They also say that the faculty met, despite the students not being there the day before for the initial meeting, they met anyways and discussed how they wanted to move forward. And they end the email with this: the way the votes will work for the committee as defined by the university is that each faculty/staff member on the committee have one vote. The student representatives as a whole unit get one vote, meaning there will be 8 voting faculty and 1 student vote. So the necessity for these hiring panel requirements became abundantly clear in that moment, that they would try and condense 5 different student perspectives into one vote, but allow for each individual faculty member and staff member to have their own individual vote. December 7th, the faculty schedules the joint meeting for both committees to present the hiring requirements for December 14th at 2 p.m. December 13th, the day before the meeting is scheduled, I meet with all 10 student committee members and we start to discuss and go over the list of hiring requirements. So this was a very comprehensive list, and it was set up in chronological order for how it would be implemented even. And the effect of it would be collaborative, it is a communal process, and it is truly transparent. And in total, it ended up being 12 steps to implement. So we go over all 12, and we agree on each one individually. We read through them, we make sure that there's nothing that we need to add, change, and if there is, we do so. And we all agree on them. December 14th comes, the day of the meeting. So December 14th at 11 a.m., the students and myself get on another call to do another practice run through of the presentation of the hiring requirements. And in this, we decide that we're going to ask right off the bat if they believe that the hiring process can be student and community led. If the answer is yes, then we would proceed with reading the requirements and get their feedback and have a conversation. If they said no, that would pretty much be the answer already, and we didn't feel that there was any point in reading the requirements in real time at that point because conversation clearly wasn't going to be possible. So we decided if they said no, we would send them the requirements in an email and give them an amount of time to respond to that. December 14th, 2 p.m., the meeting commences, and I am not able to be there with the students because at this point the administration has avoided contact with me or Sierra Truths extremely, so I'm not able to be there. But I know that the students will be amazing because they always are. I'm on FaceTime with one of the students so that I can hear in real time and so that I can offer any kind of support that they may need since I can't be there.
We can't just alter the process because we have consistency is a critical factor in any processes with a hiring entity. So I'm just going to leave that there. Well, why don't you go ahead and start and present your information?
We understand that.
Very quickly into the presentation, I don't even think we didn't even get past, very much past the introductions of everyone. And they are interrupted by Lisa Dash Grimes, the head of talent acquisition, who is the one spearheading this hiring process. And she interrupts and says that she is willing to hear the concerns of the students, but she feels confused as to why requirements even need to be had. And then tops it all off with this question. She asks, has a past candidate harmed you?
This does not ensure actual internal safety for students.
Well, can you give me an example of what you're talking about? Because I really don't know, and I really want to know. What do you mean about safety? What? I don't understand what that means. Have people been hired before that have hurt students?
Yeah.
This was so shocking to hear. The students were shocked because this person is in the HR department, the same department that is supposedly doing all of these investigations into all of these claims and all of these concerns and all of these complaints that are being brought forward. This is the person. So for her to not even know, for the head of talent acquisition to not know why that talent needed to be acquired because of the past harm that has happened, that CR Truths literally was created to address, was astounding, actually. They ask the very first question. Again, mind you, we haven't even gotten to the requirements yet, none of that. They ask, do you feel that this could be a student-led process? And Lisa Grimes quickly answers no, under the reasoning that it is a liability for the university. The statement that it's a liability for the university presumes that, one, the university is the only entity that is capable of assessing legality or liability, which is not true. Anyone can do that. But also, it assumes that we hadn't thought of that going into the development of these requirements. If they had let us speak, they would have heard that the very first part of the hiring requirements states that we had assessed liability and legality of these requirements, and that we were also willing to assess the liability and legality of these requirements with the university if they agreed to work with us to implement them. But we didn't even get a chance to say that because it was a stern no and an assumption that we were incapable of doing the thing that the university also can do. The conversation becomes kind of disjointed by that point, and it becomes clear through Tiffany Hamilton's statement that she actually hadn't communicated with Lisa Grimes about the issues surrounding Amy, the program in general, or CR Truths. So again, this person who is a major figure in the HR department at the school had no awareness and was going into a conversation with students from the MT program and PACE Performing Arts in general with no prior knowledge of any of the harm that had been illuminated the months prior. So it becomes clear that this conversation is not going to be an effective one, and the students hold their ground and assert that they will be leaving the meeting and that they will be sending the list of requirements via email, and the response from the administration can happen there, and the meeting ends. Later that day, December 14th at 3:30 p.m., we develop an email response to send the list of requirements to the faculty and staff on the hiring panels. We give them 36 hours to respond with a yes or no, or an agreement or a disagreement, or even any kind of conversation. We give them 36 hours because at this point, when we look at the full timeline that we've provided here, the administration has had months to process requirements and requests of this nature. The hiring requirements were not exactly the same as the abolition requirements, but they were in the same nature. And we saw the response to that, which was none. So we felt like they didn't really need time to process or digest in the same way that they did in August, because they've been sitting with this kind of information for a while. So we give them 36 hours to respond, and this is the email that we sent. We received this response from Lisa Grimes. Thank you for sending this information for review. The time limit came and went, the 36 hours passed, and we got nothing from them. So we sent this email response back to them. To this day, we have not received any response from PACE administration or faculty. Today's date is January 17th. The students have been in school for 5 months. The amount of energy and time that we have put into, and specifically with the hiring requirements, The students and I spent at least 2 months developing our responses and our presentation and our requirements and how we were going to have the conversation with them. A lot of work went into trying to have this change implemented in an official and productive way. It wasn't haphazard and it wasn't not thought out. It was a lot of time. So to receive a response that says, thank you for this information for review, and then not hear anything back, silence speaks volumes. And we know what this silence means. We see it. We've been seeing it. We know how they feel about this movement. We know how they feel about student concerns, and we know how they feel about the desire to work with us. We know. That completes this entire timeline. And I want to take this moment to address what we've learned and what we've seen throughout this entire time. This school was presented with a fresh and new option to approach these issues that have been happening for 15 plus years. And not from the place of burning the school down, not from the place of everyone's terrible and needs to leave, but from the place of revitalizing and imagining what this program could actually be. That is what abolition is. Abolition isn't the process of burning down structures and tearing everything apart. Abolition is an imagination process. And that's what we are engaged in here. And that's what we were trying to include the school in. But as you've seen, we come in with prepared, well-developed, well-thought-out approaches, and we are met with underdeveloped and ignorant and closed-off responses, or no response at all, as we've seen. We didn't come into this thinking that we were going to be at odds with the school. We thought that we were going to be a resource to help them. And I believe we still can, and everyone on this team believes that we still can. But they have to move out of their own way. And that's what we've been trying to get them to do this entire semester. But as you've seen, every effort that we have taken has been met with a door shut in our face. That doesn't mean we'll stop trying, but that just goes to show this is what we are dealing with. And this isn't just a problem of Pace University. This we are seeing in this entire timeline and the entire timeline that has existed for Pace. We are seeing how the system and the institution of oppression functions. It is designed to be impervious to threats to itself. If it wasn't, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it has. This is why systems of oppression exist for as long as they do. They are self-sustaining. And the way that they do that is whenever something comes in to try and change the system or destabilize the system, it's designed to exhaust, burn out, and uninspire. It is not designed to invite. And that is what we are seeing. We have not received any actual invitation to create change. We've heard words of invitation, but no actual action to back it. And that is the close of this movement report. Thank you for watching. I know it was a lot, but I think it was really important to really see all the inner workings, and we have a lot of action plans that we're still developing and still working on, and that we are really excited to include our community in. But for now, the new semester starts on January 23rd, and we will be fighting just as hard as we always have. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.